No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wood, and this is Outspoken Live episode number 254. And developing today, Reform UK has gone to war with newly released Tommy Robinson by demanding, and listen carefully to this, anyone who has supported Britain's political prisoner, even on Twitter over a decade ago, be purged from every political party. Not just Reform UK, any political party. This is an insane overreach, and Tommy now speaking out against Nigel Farage.
I don't get why he keeps attacking us.
Yeah, he could just not mention you, but he insists on throwing you under the bus every chance he gets.
Which is an establishment move.
Yeah,
that's an establishment move.
Yeah,
he's actually he when I was in prison, he done more to attack me and discredit me being able to get out than anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, ex-chairman Zia Yusuf remains front and centre for the party despite a shocking expose at the weekend revealing claims of misconduct against the Muslim businessman.
This has also been dubbed a Robin Hood policy today. Were you happy with that nickname of the modern-day Robin Hood? And Zia, are you confident this policy is a good use of your time? Thank you.
Well, that took a long time to come, didn't it? I'm not sure America's going to need our help with Iran. I think we've hindered them already.
In my digest next, I'll explain why just because we are screwed under Starmer doesn't mean we accept the horrific cancellation of patriotic Brits simply for supporting Tommy Robinson by a Reform Party that claims to be on the side of the people. Then, analysis from my superstar panel, Stephen Woolfe, Director of the Centre for Migration and Prosperity, and Will Coleshill, Founder and Editor of Resistance GB. Also coming up on the show today, the British Bashing Corporation exposed by its own newsreader, Martine Croxall, for trans extremism, as high-profile figures now fear the presenter is at risk of being sacked just for speaking the truth. And an extraordinary new GB News row over claims Eamonn Holmes physically kicked a staff member in his wheelchair will reveal that shocking inside story. Then, in the uncancelled after show on Substack, Meghan Markle and Prince Harry on the brink after a series of crises. We'll outline the full claims by teaming up with the Royal News Network, and you can sign up to watch on Substack, www.outspoken.live. We're also going to unveil our first Greatest Britain and Union Jackass of the week at the end of the show, but it's chosen by you. So here are your nominees for Union Jackass today. India Willoughby, put forward by Darren Donaldson for the following post, which is completely bonkers. She wouldn't last 24 hours in Iran. I've got to read you this quote. So India Willoughby tweeted, "Works both ways. I could live in Iran. Better trans rights than the UK and US. We do nearly all of the bad things they do. Israel is currently wiping out a whole people aided and abetted by Labour who is shamefully trying to cover their ass. War crime. I don't feel safe with Netanyahu or Trump having nuclear weapons. I don't believe anything that Israel, US or UK say. Why should I? Because I'm English and should trust the BBC." But of course, the madness there is her saying that she would be safer as a trans person in Iran. Love, they'll throw you off the top of the nearest building, let me tell you. Then, Stephen Fry, nominated by Claire Welwyn, and that is for his attacks on J.K. Rowling, which we'll reveal later in the show. And Narinder Kaur, nominated by Big Mama Booth for two gloriously bonkers posts from the paragon of virtue and good taste plus international diplomacy. They said Narinder Kaur, bland Italian food in Italy plus racist bunker bluster bombs. To be honest, all her posts are nuts. So let me show you the two posts that she's nominated for. The first, day 7 in Sicily. I've eaten 19 types of pasta, the same pizza over and over, and would now kill for a samosa or curry. Why is international cuisine so scarce here? And then on Iran, white supremacy in real time, illegally waging war without any consequences whatsoever, ever, and all because they couldn't find it in themselves to vote for a woman of colour. Oh, yeah. Drunk. That drunk Kamala Harris would be doing a much better job now. Okay, so good nominees there. Get voting. You can do so in the YouTube live chat. Let me know your comments. I'll read out the best, the worst at the end of the show. Do stick with us. But now, let's go. Sadly, it is now impossible to avoid the conclusion that Reform UK and Nigel Farage are purposefully out to persecute supporters of Tommy Robinson, which I believe is going to result in a devastating split on the right in the years to come. And that split will be disastrous for the movement to save our floundering United Kingdom. Now, while I acknowledge reform is surging in the polls, absolutely surging. I mean, there's hardly a choice, is there, with the evil Slippery Starmer versus the incompetent Kemi Badenoch. I also know that the Overton window is very much shifting on the UK's political prisoner. At the next Uniting the Kingdom rally, which is going to see the likes of Jordan Peterson team up with Katie Hopkins, I think Reform UK will see the mistake in labelling millions of ordinary patriotic Brits as extremists who deserve to be cancelled. I mean, just remember that in recent months, Ant Middleton, Douglas Carswell, and of course Elon Musk have all spoken out publicly in support of this man. But Reform's deranged campaign, no doubt led by Zia Yusuf, who, by the way, let me tell you, he is still running the show at Reform UK, despite quitting as chairman, claiming getting Reform elected was a waste of his time, and he shows no sign of abating. This, though, is the most extraordinary example, and I am furious about it. I have to speak out about it. So Reform UK called for the sacking of a Labour councillor who resigned over his apparent support for Tommy Robinson. Nigel Farage's party accused Ben Westwick, who sits on Basildon Council in Essex, of posting tweets in support of the far-right activist. This is the Daily Telegraph reporting more than a decade ago. He has now been suspended by the leader of the council, but remains as an independent member. But this is what the spokesman for the Reform UK party said. They called for Mr. Westwick's immediate resignation based on what it called his numerous offensive and deeply inappropriate comments made across his social media. Now, how dare they? This is everything Reform is meant to stand against. Offence archaeology, cancelling people based on views despised by the establishment but supported by the general population. And let's just think about this. This guy, okay, he's now a Labour councillor, like that's not a cool thing, but you want to cancel him and rule him out of politics forever because of a tweet 10 years ago? This insanity needs to stop. And by the way, what was the tweet in question? Well, the only one that I've seen was this. At EDL Tommy Robinson for Prime Minister, #make a difference. That's it. As Basil the Great surmised, this is awful from Reform, and they are inviting a backlash against their own councillors. How many of them, I wonder, have made a pro-Tommy Robinson post in the last 10 years? Carl Benjamin of Lotus Eaters added, absolutely pathetic. At this point, Tommy Robinson is a litmus test against the establishment. If they can't at least acknowledge that what he did was necessary and brave, then they are traitors who are covering their own backs when they hobnob with lefties. And Tommy himself has weighed in, writing, here's Reform UK showing their stance on free speech as they call for a lad to be sacked for a few posts a decade ago for supporting a man who was talking on the rape gangs and jihadist mindset. However, Tommy himself believes this is part of a bigger bid by Nigel Farage to banish him from polite society after his interventions against him while in solitary confinement.
I don't get why he keeps attacking us.
Yeah. He could just not mention you, but he insists on throwing you under the bus every chance he gets. Which is an
establishment move.
Yeah.
That's an establishment move.
Yeah.
He's actually, when I was in prison, he done more to attack me and discredit me being able to get out than anyone else. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if maybe Nigel, I've never met him. Maybe he's bought into the media portrayal. He says the media are wrong about him. Mm-hmm. He should know they lie. Maybe he's bought into it. I still see him sitting there on ITV News, so I don't think he gets it.
You know what's odd to me is he was asked a couple of times about one of his financiers who had a conviction, a guy named George Cottrell. And there was another member, a former member of Parliament, I believe, who had a conviction.
No, not former member. One of his sitting MPs volleyed a woman in the head and went to jail.
Times Today is carrying a story about one of your aides and colleagues, George Cottrell, who has a conviction for wire fraud in the America and has been named in another criminal investigation in Montenegro. Do you want him by your side on the campaign trail?
I firstly always stand by my friends. And secondly, there is a thing called Christian forgiveness. If people get convicted of something or do something wrong, well, they have another chance in life to go on and prove themselves.
Mr. Farage, thank you.
If in a country that believes in Christian forgiveness, he is not a good example to young tearaways, I don't think it is. Do you believe in Christian forgiveness?
Everyone believes in redemption. Everyone should have second chances.
Is he not a very good example?
Nigel, that is not the question I'm asking.
Would you accept Robinson as a member of your party? UKIP owned association with him last time.
Robinson has been to prison many, many times for many, many things. Mortgage fraud, passport problems, you name it. He's got his own campaign. We're a political party aiming to win the next general election. He's not what we need.
Okay, so he was asked about both of those folks, and his response was, from when the newscaster asked him, does he still support them? His response was, they both deserve Christian forgiveness. Don't they deserve Christian forgiveness? But when it comes to Tommy Robinson, and you ask him to say, what doesn't Tommy Robinson deserve Christian forgiveness?
He lists my criminal record, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
A pathetic little lawfare.
So no wonder with this going on, the Reform UK membership ticker keeps on ticking down. Do you see it there in the corner of the screen? 229,000. That is down over 5,000 at today's Robin Hood press conference announcing the launch of the new Britannia card, where Yusuf, of course, was front and centre, and new chairman and name only, Dr. David Bull, was nowhere to be seen. Now, why is it important that we start holding Reform to account? Well, as Dominic Cummings espoused over the weekend, it's because it is going to take a brave and bold leader and an even braver and bolder party, unafraid of mainstream sensibilities, to actually stop the invasion illegally of the UK via our southern border.
So what you have to do is you have to repeal the Human Rights Act. You have to state that you're withdrawing from the jurisdiction of the Strasbourg court, and you then deploy the Navy and you stop the boats. And you say, nobody is landing from any of these boats. Everybody from these boats that we pick up will get dropped on an island somewhere. No one will be coming to mainland Britain of any kind. The boats will be destroyed. And the people organising the boats are going to be put on a list for UK Special Forces to kill or capture, the way that we do with various terrorist organisations. As soon as you announce that that is your policy and take serious steps to do it, the boats stop straight away, because the people doing this are not ideological terrorists, right, who want to die and get into and fight about this. They're there to make money. So as soon as they realise, oh, an island nation is actually just going to stop these stupid boats, they're obviously going to send the people somewhere else.
So Dominic, can I just be clear? What you're saying for the boats is that special forces should be able to capture or kill the gang masters that are arranging for these dinghies.
Correct. If you actually are going to prioritise stopping it, which I think you should do, you can't have tens of thousands of people a year coming over on these stupid things and then stacked up in hotels for which we're paying billions of quid. Then they run around, a lot of them committing crimes, undermining any kind of public support for on immigration policy. It's an all-round farcical disaster that makes us look like a joke country.
And where we are at this moment in time, by the way, is that we are a joke country. Because Slippery Starmer is allowing a daily invasion of terrorists, rapists, drug dealers, and sex traffickers to continue at pace every single day. And we're also a joke country, by the way, because he's turned us, in a matter of months, into a laughingstock on the international stage, as his botched prediction to Sly News about Donald Trump's plan to bomb Iran proved in such a mortifying manner.
It sounds like an American attack could be imminent. Do you know what's going on?
Well, I don't think you should read into that an American attack is imminent.
He's calling the Security Council together.
We had a 2-hour discussion with the President last night. on the Middle East, on this very issue. And as a result of that, the G7 statement came out very clear about the risk of the nuclear program in Iran, Israel's right to self-defense, and the need to de-escalate across the region, including in Gaza.
So you don't think an attack is in his mind, or US joining Israel? You don't think that's in his
the wording
mind?
of the G7 statement, I think, speaks for itself. And I sat next to the President for that 2-hour discussion as we were working through not just the issues, but the statement itself.
So you're not worried about escalation?
I'm clear that we need to de-escalate.
But are you worried about escalation?
Of course I'm worried about escalation, which is why my focus is on de-escalation. I'm worried.
But, and this is the big but, just because we are screwed under that blithering embarrassment Slippery Starmer doesn't mean we accept the horrific cancellation of patriotic Brits simply for supporting Tommy Robinson from a Reform Party that claims to be on the side of the people. Now, the Superstar panel. Stephen Woolfe, Will Coleshill, great to have you both here. Stephen, what do you make of this bid by Reform UK to get this Labour councillor booted from politics altogether? I mean, he's not even a member of the Reform Party for these tweets 10 years ago supporting Tommy Robinson.
Well, I think first and foremost, it shows that Nigel Farage is now nothing more than a slippery, performative politician seeking power. And the way that he wants to do this is by chivying himself up alongside all of those and the elites that have been able to do so in the past. I mean, after all, why would you destroy your own credibility as being the individual that is opposed to cancel culture? And if you remember how when Nigel went to an event in Brussels, I think it was Popular Conservatives out there, and he was almost stopped from going in and speaking. He wrote a damning letter to the European Commission about how you should not allow the kind of idea of cancel culture from even infecting politics. People should be allowed to say and speak and do whatever they want. And in the very moment that he makes this declaration that you should cancel anyone that supports Tommy Robinson, anyone that says a good thing about Tommy Robinson, and it's a good job I won't be ever going into Reform, because I think Tommy Robinson was one of the heroes of raising the issue about grooming gangs in this country, when the elites in this country just were scoffing at him for being a white working class boy. And so therefore, he has destroyed his own credibility. And I think it goes deeper to what you said about George Cottrell, who I've met, perfectly nice guy. When I've met him, never had any harsh words with him. But his mum, Fiona Cottrell, donated £500,000 to Nigel Farage's political party in the run-up to last year's election. It's said that she dated King Charles when she was younger. And that points to something about Nigel himself. Ever since he's been at school in Dulwich, he's wanted to be part of the establishment. He feels that he is right to be there. A member of the House of Lords allegedly is this deal with that was raised with Boris Johnson to stand down the Brexit candidates and allow Boris to win. And what we're seeing with Nigel is attacking the white working class, attacking anyone that supports the idea of somebody potentially leading the working class. And as a result of that, he is now being the establishment's fool in a hope that he can become prime minister and work alongside those very elitists that he has claimed to have attacked and said that we should be changing Britain by ignoring them and having a different public and different policies and different governments and different parties that no longer support that level of establishment. He is part of it. He wants to be it. And this language shows exactly where Reform are.
Yeah, which is really worrying, actually. Really, really worrying. Will Coleshill, founder and editor of the brilliant independent news service Resistance GB. Great to have you on Outspoken for the first time today. What do you make of what Reform are doing around this? Because I could only find this one tweet from this guy, but actually, you know what? I don't give a damn what this guy posted 10 years ago on Twitter. I do not give a damn, and neither should Reform UK.
Well, it's quite funny how Reform only seems to attack to the left, but not to the right. Or, sorry, it only attacks the right, but not the left. They'll go after all of the Tommy Robinsons, they'll go after all of the UKIP people, but they're happy to take someone who comes from the Labour Party, bring them in and make them their chief whip. I mean, isn't that quite interesting, considering the Labour Party pursues an actual racist agenda where they discriminate against white people, where they want to, push for greater female representation through quotas? I think it's quite strange that Reform has one policy for the establishment, but another for all of the people, all of the dissidents. And you see a sort of trail of bodies behind Nigel Farage. You see people like Catherine Blakelock, Howard Cox, you see Stephen, who's absolutely fantastic. You see David Curtin. You've got fantastic people who should be being brought into the fold because we've got a massive deep state in this country. They control all of the institutions, and he needs to be building a team for 2029. But instead, he's going after people for being, an inch to the right of him, 2 inches to the right of him, whilst he'll happily pander to the mainstream media. He'll happily go on the BBC or Channel 4 or ITV, the people who stitch him up. And it's quite funny that when I was outside Tommy Robinson's case, was it a week or two ago?
Yes.
He specifically pushed the mainstream media to the side and spoke to the alternative media because he's got a vision of building a free media ecosystem, a truly free and independent press. So what you're doing, what we try and do, what Stephen's doing in the Lotus Eaters. But Nigel Farage doesn't have that vision. So it's very strange.
He's
and
an old media
like
guy, isn't he, Stephen? That's one of the issues with Nigel Farage. He still genuinely think it matters to be on like the Today programme at 8, 10 a.m. and speak to the establishment. But actually, even more shocking, he still thinks it matters like what the Daily Express say about you. And by the way, no offence, there's some great people at the Daily Express, but it's an irrelevance which is just not even going to exist very soon.
Yeah, well, and that's because the advisors that you have to Nigel Farage, and many of them are of the old conservative, traditional conservatives, as he sees himself, are people who still believe that there's a lot of votes to be made by being on BBC and ITV and Sky News and actually being in the newspapers, because the elderly population are still deemed to be watching that. And yet he fails to understand that a lot of those people now are actually also tuning in to Facebook, not necessarily on TikTok, but some of them picking up Instagram, some of people beginning to get onto X, and they too are having conversations with their children and their grandchildren who actually understand that there is a broader spectrum out there of new people talking about things like your show, like what Will is doing. And by the way, Will, thanks very much for bigging me up there. I appreciate it. The fiver's in the post. But the main point about it is that we have a political animal there who's losing, I'm afraid to say in many ways, losing his marbles, because this is a nonsensical story. Why would you go anywhere near it? As you pointed out, this is a 10-year-old tweet. Why raise the issue to go and be seen now as Mr. Cancel Culture over this political point? And that is either because someone has suggested, one, he needs to run scared of Tommy Robinson and any movement that includes him that would defeat him in the next 3 or 4 years, or because he's being told by his advisors, stick close to the establishment, because if things go wrong for you, at least you've attacked Tommy Robinson and we can see you as one of our own.
Breaking right now, under fire Reform UK Doge boss Zia Yusuf has been exposed in a major investigation about his misconduct in his previous business life, which included everything from very inappropriate text messages to letting his husky puppy go to the toilet in his office and expect other people to clean up his mess. Maybe a little bit like Dr. David Bull is now trying to clean up the mess that he left after months as Reform UK chairman. Noses out of joint is the headline. It's a major report by the BBC, and I'll take you through it in just one moment. But what is very, very clear is that Nigel Farage has absolutely no intention of marginalising Zia Yusuf even slightly, which I find completely bizarre, given my reporting that he was determined to see the bloke sacked as chairman. Yet as soon as Zia Yusuf quit, in that fit of pique, saying he wasn't going to waste his time trying to elect Reform UK, wasn't a good use of his time. As soon as he said that and ran to Andrew Pearce in the Daily Mail with a veiled threat of revealing all about Reform UK, Nigel Farage has decided that this guy is like his third limb. And at great cost, actually, because look at this mortifying moment from today's Robin Hood press conference.
This has also been dubbed a Robin Hood policy today. Were you happy with that nickname of the modern day Robin Hood? And Zia, are you confident this policy is a good use of your time? Thank you.
Well, that took a long time to come, didn't it? I'm not sure America's going to need our help with Iran. I think we've hindered them already, as Theo's question rather indicated. I've little doubt Diego Garcia would have been used for this. It would have been safer, more sensible, more element of surprise. I doubt they're going to ask for our help. But they could do with our support.
Just embarrassing. Rupert Lowe posted after the release of this new report at the weekend, I told Farage that Yusuf was the wrong man to be chairman. This investigation suggests that I was right to have concerns, but Jay Stewart replied saying, they got rid of you over false allegations with no evidence. There seems to be plenty of evidence against Zia Yusuf, so let's see how Nigel Farage responds to these allegations. Well, let me tell you, it was an indictment on the British Westminster establishment media today that not one person asked Zia Yusuf about these allegations. And by the way, these allegations this time aren't coming from someone like me in the so-called right-wing independent media. No. It was coming from the British Bashing Corporation. Yet they are so terrified of being accused of racism, Zia Yusuf is going to get away with literally anything. So let me take you through this reporting. The now ex-chairman acted with a brutality that a volunteer organisation which is based on personal relationships sometimes finds difficult, Gwaine Towler told the BBC. And there are a lot of people's noses which were put out of joint. We give up our free time, we do all this, and we're still treated like dirt. There was drive and commitment and passion. There was very little empathy and sympathy, and you need that too. Yusuf denies this and says that his success as Reform chairman has led to people bearing grudges. But former employees of Velocity Black, speaking to the BBC, have said some of the issues, his controlling, sometimes domineering behaviour, a lack of empathy and harsh sackings of staff, had direct echoes of how he behaved running the concierge company. His abrupt departure and 2 days later return as head of Reform's Doge even had parallels with a break and swifter than expected return as CEO of Velocity. At Velocity, concerns included his unpredictable behaviour, which meant people lived in fear, a complaint from a female ex-employee alleging inappropriate conduct, and a failure to take others into account, epitomised by unhygienic office conditions caused by Yusuf allowing his dog to defecate on the carpet. Some questioned whether Reform had asked questions about Yusuf's time running Velocity Black, and whether his issues with people could have been foreseen. We were all in complete disbelief that he went into politics, one ex-employee said. It is the most absurd thing to see. A person with that history choose to be on the public stage. I was frankly quite shocked. How does one make the jump from being a very kind of gauche CEO of a ridiculous concept ultimately to being incredibly high up in a major political party and one of the biggest democracies in the world? That seemed like a major jump. But for more than half a dozen former Velocity employees told the BBC News that Yusuf was difficult to work for and lacked leadership skills. They paint a picture of a flawed character who could be extremely demanding even by the exacting standards of a fledgling startup, as they would be when he was running Reform. Firings were frequent and brutal. Zia is one of the most challenging people I've ever worked for, one said. Everyone was on edge constantly. He was very curt. He led from fear. He had zero empathy. It was a pretty toxic environment. One former employee disliked Yusuf's approach to business so intently, he said he didn't exercise his stock options and had no regrets about doing so, despite missing out on a potentially six-figure profit. It left such a bad taste, they said. The moral culture, Zia's lack of empathy, it showed bad people can win. Now, this is important. In 2018, a female employee told colleagues she received a series of late-night phone calls from Yusuf, which she did not answer. She told them they had made her uncomfortable, and she raised them with Yusuf's co-founder the next day, asking if she could work from home because of the Zia issue. The co-founder said at the time that his co-founder had explained that the phone calls were in error and he had been trying to call someone else. Yusuf said he did not recall this, and that the company ran a 24/7 customer service operation, so it was not unusual for employees to be called at night. In June 2019, several months after her departure, the same woman wrote to the other co-founder to complain that Yusuf was repeatedly trying to follow her personal Instagram account, despite her rejecting the request each time. She said she had already blocked him on the messaging service WhatsApp. She warned she would take it further if it continued and suggested others had been contacted in the same way. BBC News has seen messages between employees suggesting that another woman who had recently left Velocity Black said they had experienced similar requests on social media. Through lawyers, Yusuf said the accusation was false and that he had employed someone to manage his social media accounts during that period. This man was put in touch with a BBC reporter by Yusuf's lawyers. He said Yusuf paid him to post content and occasionally follow people through the accounts, all at Yusuf's discretion and with his approval. He said he was not employed by Velocity Black, didn't know anyone else at the company, and did the work as a paid hobby. He said any repeat request would have been inadvertent and claimed that while Yusuf had retained access to his accounts during this time, he did not use them. Yusuf's actions sometimes betrayed a lack of regard for those around him. One day in 2018, he bought a husky puppy called Apollo. He would bring it in the office and leave other staff to deal with it, on one occasion leaving it there overnight. The dog was untrained and would run around the office and defecate on the carpet, with Yusuf seemingly unwilling to pick up the feces, ex-employees told the BBC. Yusuf's own flat near Paddington smelt of dog poo, according to two sources who visited. They could see dog feces left on the carpet in the property. Messages indicate that on one occasion in September 2018, his dog was left in an outdoor space at his London flat for several hours and sounded distressed, raising concern among his neighbours. Yusuf disputes this and said that his dog was occasionally in the office, but it would be taken outside. He denied that he left it there overnight. Wow. Let me bring in my superstar panel, Will Coleshill. Stephen Woolfe. Stephen, you look at this. You look at all this baggage that Zia Yusuf had at Velocity Black. All of this appalling behaviour that he immediately took to Reform UK. I have heard so many stories, Stephen, of staff members at Reform UK being treated appallingly, being, in their words, bullied by Yusuf. Yet the moment Yusuf made this threat to blow the whistle on Nigel Farage, he's welcomed back into the fold. He's taken back into Nigel Farage's cosy embrace. And today, he's front and centre at this major press conference with the chairman, the new chairman of the party, Dr. David Bull, nowhere to be seen. What does Zia Yusuf have on Nigel Farage, and what is going on here?
I think all of us would like to know what he has on Nigel Farage. I mean, it's very clear that from the time that he decided to come back, that he wasn't coming back in anything other than chairman in name only. And that whatever he's got and whatever he wants to do, he's planning to control the party, either seeking to become an MP himself or to take control of the leadership one day and become, in their hope, a prime minister. And so I think that's one of his big gains. But one of the interesting aspects about all the conversations that you've related in this report, and those that you can see when you go onto job sites about people who state clearly what it was like for them when they were at Velocity Black, and they're talking about Zia, is it does seem to indicate two aspects of a very narcissistic behavior. The first is a flatterer. He's a very capable of flattering people. And certainly when he would have been at Goldman Sachs and moving into Velocity, meeting very wealthy people, you have to be very capable of flattering them in such a way to make them feel great, either to donate money or invest in a particular business. And I think he's had initially a very capable way of flattering Nigel, who loves to be flattered. If you look at all the people around him, it's only those who are the greatest brown noses that are stuck with Nigel for a long time, because he doesn't truck anybody that is objectively disagreeing with him. And the second is the way that you've got this kind of behavior and shaming behavior and characteristics of grandeur. Those two seem to be the bullying, the flattering, all of those are quite narcissistic control characteristics. He may or may not have it, but certainly that is a very dangerous thing to have as the leader or someone representing a political party.
Will Coleshill of Resistance GB, what do you make of this new report on Zia Yusuf?
I think it's quite interesting. I mean, they've put Yusuf in charge of Doge, and they're portraying him as sort of reforms Elon Musk, but he's not sent any rockets to space. He sent a few CEOs to a champagne brunch. Yes. Frankly, the idea of someone running a party like a business is a little bit alien, because parties rely on people and volunteers. It's a grassroots movement. People have gone out. They've frozen in the cold in 2019. I was campaign manager for the Brexit Party back in 2019. It was cold. It was horrible. We slogged it out every day, dawn till dusk, as people were coming in, doing their travel, commuting in the mornings, handing out leaflets all day, all night. Is Zia Yusuf putting in that level of effort? I don't think he is. People are giving their absolute all, and he's put in, what, 200,000 out of 20 million apparently that he's worth, and he's treating people like employees. Activists, as any activist leader or campaign manager will tell you, aren't employees. They can't be treated like employees. These are people who voluntarily give their time. So no wonder there's a bad taste in people's mouths. And you see people like Stuart Mackay. You see people like Alex Stevenson. Alex Stevenson was a county councillor. For a point, I believe he was the highest elected member of Reform by being a county councillor. And he was essentially ignored, swept to one side when there were electoral irregularities, as we shown on the podcast. He was ignored by Farage when he said, what do we do about this? Are we going to take this to court? Farage essentially is treating people as disposable by putting in Zia Yusuf, and Zia Yusuf can take all of the flack for it, which I think is unfortunate, because you've got really good people and we need a new government to save this country in 2029.
Stephen Woolfe, what I find really fascinating about this, and of course you were incredibly close to Nigel Farage for a period until they decided you could not be the successor, you could not be the chosen one. But what is quite fascinating to me about this is that Yusuf threw Farage under the bus, made a very specific and public threat against him in the Daily Mail, and yet he was welcomed back. So does this come down to fundamentally the fact that Farage knows he's very vulnerable when it comes to being accused of issues of racism? That seems to be the path that Yusuf was at least talking about going down.
I don't think there's any doubt that Nigel's always been petrified about being called a racist. He hates it himself, and he winces when people called him names, and he surrounded himself in the past with people in the party that would actually try and insulate him from those claims. And he would bring in some very good people. You talked about David Curtin, for example, is a really useful individual in the party. But for Nigel, wouldn't have seen him for his talents. He would have only seen him as capable as a shield against the claims that UKIP were a racist political party. And I think similarly, he would have done that for someone like myself with mixed race. But that doesn't go away from the fact that there's something else behind this. It's not just about the racism issue. There is something much deeper that an individual with just £200,000 in a very short period of time that he meets at a cocktail event, allegedly with Stuart Wheeler, that's where the story begins, has gained so much influence, so much power, and even having criticised Nigel in such an open way that Nigel's accepted him back. And there's a lot of questions to be asked. And I find one of the points that you've raised very, very important about this. Why have the press not taken this report and questioned him in depth today. Because if it was Boris Johnson, they'd be jumping all over Boris and pointing out this.
Or
that.
by the way, Stephen, if it was anyone else within Reform UK, there is a protection shield that Zia Yusuf has as an Asian and as a Muslim man within Reform UK. Now, it's very rare for me to give that much credence to a BBC News report, because usually I would argue that the BBC, if they're reporting on Nigel Farage, it's a total hit piece. But the irony here is that actually the mainstream media don't want to touch this BBC report. As I say, I've heard so much about very specific individual complaints from people who were working within Reform UK. They've tried to get these into the mainstream media and they have been rebuffed, because there is a feeling that if you're in the mainstream media and you go after Zia Yusuf, you're automatically going to be accused of racism. Developing right now, fears that BBC News presenter Martine Croxall could have her job at threat after an astonishing on-air rejection of the BBC's trans extremism. Now, this prompted J.K. Rowling to post on X over the weekend, "I have a new favourite BBC News presenter." And in the last couple of hours, she has now also posted on X in reply to Martine Croxall, given these rumours that Martine could be disciplined, "You better not be in any trouble." Now, this was an astonishing moment. Just 20 seconds of television that has gone around the world. But why it's so significant is that BBC News readers are not meant to go off the auto cue. They are not meant to correct what they are being told to say by the bosses who run the British Bashing Corporation. And in this case, they were trying to tell Martine Croxall to suggest that people could be pregnant, which means that men could be pregnant. Watch.
London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine has released research which says that nearly 600 heat-related deaths are expected in the UK. Malcolm Mystery, who is involved in the research, says that the aged, pregnant people, women, and those with pre-existing health conditions need to take precautions.
Now, James Essex sent this around the world, writing, "The BBC is so utterly enthralled to gender ideology that it took a brave newsreader to correct the teleprompter instruction to say pregnant people by instead saying women afterwards. Let's hope she isn't cancelled for her rebellion." James English, the podcaster, added this challenge: "If she gets sacked for this, I am happy to donate £25,000 to her." Legend. People are tired of this BS. And when Martine went public, writing a huge thank you to everyone who has chosen to follow me today for whatever reason, it's been quite a ride, Rael Braverman, the husband of former Home Secretary Suella Braverman, but now a Reform UK activist, posted, "You are a hero. Is your job safe?" So to my superstar panel now, we have Stephen Woolfe, Director of the Centre for Migration and Prosperity, and Will Coleshill, Founder and Editor of Resistance GB. I mean, Will, this is quite an extraordinary story in a lot of ways, isn't it? Because it's something so minor that actually represents an issue that is so major. Because this woke mind virus has completely infiltrated to the British Bashing Corporation, where they think it is totally normal to write in a script for a female presenter pregnant people instead of pregnant women.
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, because this is a fundamentally toxic and dangerous ideology. Dan, do you know who John Money is, or was?
Yes, yes.
He was the godfather of this gender ideology. He took two twin boys, one of whom they both had a condition with their genitals, one of whom had surgery, which went disastrously wrong. He stepped in, decided to start raising this child, or helping the parents to raise this child, as a female. Put out plenty of fake evidence saying that he was completely adapting. They gave him hormones, put him in dresses. They started calling him a girl. Part of his treatment that he was giving to these children was childhood sexual rehearsal play, where he had the twin boys, these are twin brothers, children, act out sexual acts which he photographed. For the rest of his life, David lived with depression and he shot himself with a shotgun at age 38. This is their profits. This is where this ideology comes from. The idea that you can have this gender as a social construct. Gender is a linguistic term. Words have gender, humans have sex. And we've just got to fully reject this. It's completely Orwellian. I mean, what is it? The start of George Orwell's 1984 is it was a bright, cold April day and the clocks were striking 13. We must just reject it. They want to destroy language in and of itself. They want us using these words, gender, what's your gender, what are your pronouns? No. We just have to reject their language because we think in language. If we keep repeating these terms, if we keep using these politicized terms, then we'll start to think in them. And it does brainwash us. And that's why they bombard it through the BBC, whether it's through all of the TV programs, the soaps, through social media, everything they can to try and brainwash us and get us to conform to the way they think, they want us to think.
Well, indeed, but it's a very good point to raise Dr. John money because no one wants to talk about him, do they? Because actually what he did was totally twisted. But Stephen Woolfe, I think the British Bashing Corporation are in deep trouble here because J.K. Rowling, you saw there, has put them on notice. And if they were to discipline Martine Croxall, I think all hell would break loose.
Quite rightly, and it should do, to be honest. And J.K. Rowling's been at the forefront of raising the important issue of how women are being cancelled by this ideology, as Will has indicated. It is wrong. It is not pregnant people. It is pregnant women. And most people in the world recognize this as being sensible. But whilst we get the indoctrination from the BBC and all the programs and the media, we then, as you noticed, get their stars, the BBC stars, the media stars like Stephen Fry, that comes up and criticizes J.K. Rowling for taking such a principled stance. And I think he caused her a lost cause. And my view about people like Stephen Fry is that he's just simply become an insufferable, pompous, mansplaining misogynist, quite frankly. And the people who are representing these views, who potentially would want to fire this BBC presenter, in many ways, I believe, misogynists in their own right, by the ideology of saying that men could determine that they are women and they should take the priority over this. And that's where the BBC will be in massive, massive trouble. Let's hope so. I don't want her to see her lose a job. She's made the right decision. It's actually also lawful nowadays to indicate this has been the case, but we will watch this with a very, very keen eye.
Well, I'm really glad, Stephen, that you raised the issue of Stephen Fry, by the way, because do you remember last week, he was utterly vicious in his attacks on J.K. Rowling. He said that she had been captured by TERFs. That was his term, trans exclusion and radical feminists. By the way, I love TERFs. I'm proud to be a TERF. Like, I think it's great. But he said she had been captured by TERFs and that she was a lost cause. And what was interesting is a lot of people assumed, including me, that Stephen Fry and J.K. Rowling were friends because they'd been pictured together and he had been the narrator for the audiobooks of all of the Harry Potter novels. And the awful Joe Mann posted, I've spoken to many of J.K. Rowling's once friends who now despair of her privately but won't do so publicly, which is very much the British way, and why nothing ever changes for the better. So well done, Stephen Fry. And J.K. Rowling, I loved her response. She wrote, "It is a great mistake to assume that everyone who claims to have been a friend of mine was ever considered a friend by me." And
that was brilliant.
Isn't that great, Stephen? Isn't that great?
Superb. Yeah, no, I love J.K. Rowling. I mean, of course, she won't agree with all our political views, and that's perfectly fine.
She's not a Brexiteer. She's not a Brexiteer.
She's not at all. And she's incredibly great in a democracy to see someone of such influence challenging the elitist views of the day, and something that is so dangerous representing that. But she's not alone. We've seen many great women, Navratilova, for example, another great supporter of this particular issue, all being attacked by the likes of Stephen Fry, who are quite happy to take the cash, take the moolah from people like J.K. Rowling's and their projects and pretend that they're friends. You know what it's like in the media, all smiles and backhanding until the next job comes along and then I'll stab you in the back. And that's exactly what they're doing, but they're showing their real character. When I say that he's now somebody who's insufferable, I think Stephen Fry has become insufferable for lots of people for lots of reasons. And as I would have dinner, I'd love to have dinner with J.K. Rowling, despite our differences. I couldn't care less about Stephen Fry.
Well, it's interesting that you point that out because there's a bit of a reevaluation going on about Stephen Fry because of the way that he turned on J.K. Rowling. And Johnny Ball actually picked up what he'd said in 2015, where he compared child prostitution in Victorian times to the Pakistani Muslim rape gang scandals in Rotherham and Manchester. And Johnny Ball said, did he honestly think those girls who were raped by Pakistani pedo gangs were prostitutes? Martina Navratilova, who you just mentioned as well, another hero on this, posted FFS, as if children could consent. Now, I want to show you the video because I think it's important that people see it in its full context, but this is what Stephen Fry said.
And I would say the extraordinary thing is, yes, there's a lot of evidence for child prostitution in Britain in Victorian times, but the thing that most shocks me, in a way, is how much evidence there is of it in our time. Recently in Rotherham and in Manchester. The thing that's shocking about it, that has, in a sense, not ever really been addressed, is A, why the red top newspapers and indeed even the broadsheets consider it such a salacious headline grabber. They know people will see child sex and they will reach for the newspaper. Christopher Hitchens used to say this. He's one of the few brave people enough to say it, brave enough people to say it. Is there something inside them? Is it purely a protection of their own children that makes them look for it?
I mean, Will Coleshill, that is why the establishment got this scandal so very, very, very wrong. These were not child prostitutes in any way.
Very much the idea of a child prostitute. How could children possibly consent? I mean, there's got to be a level of sensitivity here. You've got different estimates, but some estimates say 250,000 little girls raped, 250,000 little girls having their lives destroyed. Then there are all of the echoes of that on their friends, their family, their communities, their future partners. You could have a cycle of abuse with their children. You don't know how much that's affected people's lives. And Fry calls that salacious, but it was the mainstream media who didn't want to cover it. It was the mainstream media who covered all of this up. Whilst people like Tommy Robinson, who we spoke about earlier, were out there marching the streets and trying to uncover all of this through independent media, independent journalism. I just think it's abhorrent what Fry's saying.
Yeah, I mean, Stephen Woolfe, what do you make of that sort of... Because this is, I mean, honestly, there were Pakistani Muslim rape gangs operating in the United Kingdom as far back... Well, actually, I've seen some evidence to say as far back as the 1950s. But one of the ways that this cover-up was allowed to go on was because the establishment did dismiss the victims very often as child prostitutes. And I feel like Stephen Fry is so wrong to try and dismiss it in that way. Now, what's interesting, that video was from 2015. He probably wouldn't do so today because the Overton window has shifted, but we have to call out the people who allowed this cover-up to go on for so many decades, right? Not just years, but decades.
Oh, Dan, I just find that particular video, which I hadn't seen until just now, sickening.
Yeah.
I find it stomach turning. I have a daughter myself, and to ever think that someone like Stephen Fry, trying to be intellectual, using words like salacious and child prostitution, as though it was some kind of commoner's day issue, as though these little girls were actually selling their body for money when they weren't. It was totally different. These were slaves. These were abused human beings, and with no competence and ability to say no. And there's no way in any kind of sensible discussion that you could sit there intellectualizing this as though it was a child prostitution of the modern day compared to what happened in the Victorian ages. I mean, I said before I don't like to see people cancelled, but having seen that, that's one of the individuals now I feel should be cancelled if he ever held those views and continues to hold those views, which I just think are beyond the pale.
They're absolutely beyond the pale, and this is why I love J.K. Rowling actually bursting so many of these bubbles. Because look, I don't agree, as Stephen said earlier, I don't agree with J.K. Rowling on a lot, right? Like, she was massively anti-Brexit, but it's not the point, because sometimes it's not about agreement, it's just about truth. And that's why what Martine Croxall did was so powerful, because if she were to be disciplined for stating a biological reality, I think the backlash against the BBC would be so massive. Should point out too, by the way, Martine's not someone who's scared of BBC management, because she previously successfully sued them for age discrimination after she and a number of other senior female presenters were effectively sacked because they wanted younger models on air. So I think this is great, because what we don't want at the British Bashing Corporation, you know I am a massive proponent of just defunding the organisation altogether. I think the BBC is a disgrace. I think it's an embarrassment. But what we don't want is woke ideologues on air who are going to go along with whatever management tell them to do. And trust me, as someone who knows what it's like to be sacked for going off script, or actually for not doing what the producers are telling you to do, I thought there was a real bravery in that. So well done her. But speaking of GB News, there has been a major drama involving Eamonn Holmes over the weekend, and an alleged wheelchair attack from Eamonn on a member of staff. Now, this is an extraordinary story. I'm going to take you through it all, because it's completely nuts and totally bizarre, and you're not going to want to miss it in just 1 minute. But first, if you're anything like me, you've spent so much time trying to find the perfect skincare treatments for your face, only to realise you've been neglecting the skin on your neck. But as I've got older, I know that's a massive oversight, because the neck is on display all the time, yet lots of folk just treat it as an afterthought in their routine. And I know I'd fallen into that trap. And what's been interesting actually is, since starting this campaign with Go Pure, I've spoken to many in our outspoken audience, many women, who tell me that they know the skin on their neck is thinner, more delicate and less oily than facial skin, and they need specialized care, but they just don't know where to get it from. And so I have to say, that is why Go Pure is the answer. It is an absolutely beautiful product. This is the Go Pure Tighten and Lift Neck Cream, and it's transforming the lives and necks of women, and some men too, all across the globe. So let me tell you about this gorgeous product, because I saw a noticeable difference within just weeks. Oh, and by the way, outspoken viewers and listeners get 25% off Go Pure if you use the code DAN, that's DAN, at checkout today. So just head to gopure.com/Dan, use code DAN, and you're all set. But what's so amazing about Go Pure is that its proprietary firming complex is actually designed to visibly firm and smooth the skin on your neck and chest in as little as 4 to 8 weeks. In a consumer study, 100% of users said their skin looked more supple, 97% noticed a firmer appearance. Indeed, Go Pure's full line of science-backed skin and body care have delivered for over 100,000 real women with real results. It's dermatologist recommended, cruelty-free, plus with over 1 million jars sold. I don't think you can say this is a beauty secret anymore, right? Because it's not a secret, if you get what I'm saying. So, tighten, lift, and restore elasticity in your neck, because your skincare routine shouldn't stop at your jawline. And for that limited time, outspoken viewers and listeners get 25% off Go Pure using the code DAN, D-A-N, at checkout. Just head to gopure.com/Dan, use the code DAN, and you are all set. Quick favor too, after you buy, when they ask you where you heard about Go Pure, make sure you tell them it was after watching Outspoken. But now, back to the show. Breaking today, an extraordinary claim of a wheelchair attack at GB News involving Eamonn Holmes and a floor manager. Now, you can imagine I was very shocked about this report, and I've done my own investigation over the past 24 hours. I will tell you everything I know, because this story is totally bizarre. But here's how it first came into the public domain in the Mail on Sunday yesterday. Exclusive GB News launches probe after Eamonn Holmes' wheelchair hits female producer as he was returning to set. And the newspaper reported GB News bosses have launched an investigation after a young female producer was left bruised when she was hit by Eamonn Holmes' wheelchair. The Mail on Sunday can reveal the woman has made a complaint following the alleged incident 10 days ago. It happened as she attempted to explain to the employee pushing Mr. Holmes that the star could not return to the set to continue hosting his breakfast show following a toilet break because the cameras were rolling. Sources at GB News have told the newspaper that tensions ran high as the woman said it wasn't the best time for Mr. Holmes to return to his seat, although there is no suggestion that he did anything wrong. One said Eamonn gets wheeled on and off the set because his mobility is so bad. He is really struggling to move around these days, so as part of the care that GB News are giving him, he will be wheeled to the loo if he needs to go during the programme. Only this time, there was some confusion over whether or not he could go back to his seat as the cameras were going and the show was being aired. The poor young woman was doing her job and saying that it wasn't possible for him to go back on. There were frustrations over it from some involved, and the next thing, the woman gets hit and she got a bruise on her leg. It has been the talk of the studio ever since. GB News' HR department is now said to be looking into the incident. Bosses at the channel are becoming increasingly worried about Mr. Holmes' health and how long he is going to be able to host his breakfast show, which runs from 6 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. 3 days a week. He is currently chauffeured from his Surrey home to the West London set and back again. He struggles so much with his mobility, which has deteriorated following a double hip replacement and spinal surgery on 3 slip discs in 2016 and 2022 respectively, that he is wheeled on and off the set. Mr. Holmes has been battling health issues since surgery in 2022. In 2023, he said he could no longer walk or look after himself, and he's been supported by his new girlfriend, Katie Alexander, following his split from wife Ruth Langsford last year. Now, this was a very serious allegation, and I have to be honest with you, I'm incredibly surprised. I worked with Eamonn for a number of years and never saw this type of behaviour from him. Of course, when we were both struggling at Woke ITV, Eamonn was completely beloved by staff. However, you know, in my role as an independent reporter, I have to tell you the truth. I have to tell you what I've learned, and this story, unfortunately, is broadly true. But what I can tell you is that rather than it being a producer who was impacted, it was actually a floor manager, a very popular young female floor manager at GB News, who has alleged that she was kicked directly by Eamonn Holmes. Now, the other side to the story is that the investigation did study CCTV footage, which did not clearly show an attack taking place. So it does feel like there will be no further action. However, there is obviously vast upset at GB News about the fact that this young floor manager has been thrust into the public domain when she was just doing her job. And the reality is it is not her fault that there have been issues in terms of transporting Eamonn to the toilet. And while this is obviously not an area that I want to get into, it has caused a lot of stress and strain for staff at GB News because of certain issues that have cropped up in the past. So unfortunately, this is now a really serious situation because GB News has been mired in HR controversy for such a long time. And if this floor manager were to quit or go public, I think they could have a major lawsuit on their hands. However, what's equally fascinating and coming out of GB News is the fact that they believe Eamonn Holmes' girlfriend, this woman, Katie Alexander, is now commenting on stories in regards to what is going on the Mail Online website. Now, I want to take you through this because it's particularly fascinating and really odd. So the handle that this woman, this girlfriend of Eamonn Holmes, is using online is or cold winter. And she made a comment on the Mail Online revealing the identity of the floor manager involved, which has since been deleted. But remaining on the website is this comment. She wasn't a producer, she was a runner. She lied and has lied before about someone else who works for GB News. All was captured on CCTV, which proved nothing happened. Katie Hind, that's the reporter at the Daily Mail, is pure evil, and the trolls on here are just as bad. Now, what would lead you to believe, you might ask, that the person commenting, making that comment on the Mail Online, is indeed Eamonn Holmes' new girlfriend, Katie Alexander? Well, it's because if you look through all of the other comments that she has made on the Mail Online in relation to stories involving Eamonn Holmes, they all have a real inside knowledge of this relationship between Eamonn and Katie. So I'll take you through some of them. On an earlier story, she wrote, "She isn't a marriage counsellor. The press like to print that as it makes a better story. Maybe because, like the article said, she has school-age children, which she won't uproot. I cannot wait for Eamonn and Katie to prove all of the haters wrong. Happiness is what everyone should have." On Ruth Langsford, she posted, "Ruth is a greedy woman. She is bitter and can't move on without wanting to rinse Eamonn dry. That says a lot about her, just wanting his money. Awful woman. There is one question that must be on his mind. Yeah, why didn't I leave sooner? Emasculating Eamonn, throwing plates at him. Vicious woman behind closed doors. Just wait for the truth to come out about her." So that's claims about Ruth Langsford. Here's some more comments. Flaunting his new partner. Hardly, darling. They were seen together for the first time. They haven't done interviews nor shared their true story, and they're expected to stay indoors forever. FFS, the Paps are cockroaches. How many times does this need to be said? Katie is not a relationship counsellor, and people have no idea about what items of clothing she is wearing or where they bought them from. Her bracelet is from Abbott Leon. And then so much detail about specific incidents with Eamonn. He told her to walk in front so she could say, "Excuse me," to people so he could get through the busy airport. And FYI, she hates the cameras and attention. No one sees or hears about the battle she's had. Speaking about the end of the marriage between Eamonn Holmes and Ruth Langsford, their relationship ended 2 years ago. They only announced it in May. The house was big enough for them to remain living in separate areas. They lived separate lives for 2 years before it was announced, so they hadn't just separated. And another one with intimate detail of an airport incident. He told her to walk in front to clear people out the way, as the airport was very busy. I came off the plane with them. She is far from self-centered. She was so attentive to him. And on it goes. So the clear implication here, and there's a reason why I've gone through all of those messages, is that it seems that someone very closely connected to Eamonn Holmes or Eamonn Holmes' partner, I don't know for sure that it is this woman, but certainly someone who's closely connected, has now launched counter allegations about this floor manager, claiming that she lied about being kicked by Eamonn Holmes. So this is an incredibly messy situation, because any type of physical altercation on a TV set would usually lead to some type of automatic disciplinary action. And of course, things are difficult for Eamonn at the moment, and I have great sympathy for the guy. I mean, this was a recent clip from The Breakfast Show where the entire studio ended up silent when Eamonn had to point out that he was very impacted by the story that was being discussed on set by the TV presenter Tim Vincent. Watch.
Doctors over the years have said, you know, not quite sure if you feel like you can exercise, then exercise. They're now saying you should exercise as soon as you feel good enough.
This just
and
makes
this
me,
will make a big
This makes me feel awful because I would have been pro-exercise, except I can't move. I'm in a wheelchair now, and I can't put on the right trainers, I can't change, I can't go to the showers, I can't do things. It's just, I can't stand up. So there are a lot of people who are incapable of exercising, and therefore, rightly so, we see their increase of cancer growing.
Absolutely, and that's an issue that everybody's going to face, and you're obviously in a really difficult position. Any exercise, I think, is going to help, especially for these people that have had cancer once and can get out there. And it's very isolating as well, exercise.
So you're actually saying, if you're in redemption from cancer or whatever, you could keep it at bay by exercising.
It's actually better than a pill.
So bless him. I mean, it's a horrible situation. But unfortunately, because of the interventions online from this person. And by the way, I've got to be clear, I have no evidence that it is necessarily Eamonn's new girlfriend who is posting it, but you will see it as someone who does have intimate knowledge about what's going on at GB News in terms of this investigation and what has previously gone on in a number of incidents with Eamonn and the new girlfriend, and certainly has an axe to grind against Ruth Langsford. So this is a really messy story. Let me turn to my superstar panel. Stephen Woolfe, Director of the Centre for Migration and Prosperity, and Will Coleshill, Founder and Editor of Resistance GB. I mean, Will, this is the last thing GB News needs at the moment, given it has been mired in scandal over a number of months. What do you make of it?
Well, you see, they've got rid of you. What they did to Mark Stein. It's unfortunate for it to come at this time. I mean, this does seem to be a very difficult one to call. And I think fundamentally people are innocent until they're proven guilty. But I've got to say, you've done a great bit of sleuthing on this. But it doesn't help GB News because they are being hit with scandal after scandal after scandal and purging their staff. I think their staff fundamentally are on borrowed time, a lot of them, if they are thinking of speaking out.
Stephen Woolfe, you're obviously someone who has appeared as a regular on GB News, so I don't know if you feel a little bit conflicted on this one, but what's your thought on this?
No, not necessarily. Every one of the floor managers and producers that I've met and those who call me up to get on the show, I found as incredibly helpful and really wanting to try and do the best for the show. But I'd also say this about Eamonn. I feel deeply, deeply sorry and saddened to see the decline of Eamonn. There are two people at the moment, Eamonn Holmes and James Whale, who are both suffering incredible illnesses, and we know how close to death James is, who were both really, really kind to me when I first came into politics. And Eamonn was one of those when I was sat on a kind of, I think it was the ITV, or was it BBC? I'm sure it was ITV, wasn't he, that he was ringing in the morning show. And when we got off the cameras, he was saying lovely things about me, which other people in the media at that time would not say about someone in the UK. And I just thought the general kindness of him, and to see him deteriorate in this way, that he's now in a situation towards the end of his career where there is a threat potentially of an employment issue, or he's having to kick people out of maybe frustration. And I suspect the frustration's in himself.
100%.
Just get up and get on there. He wants to just get up and get in there. And I sense it in him. And it makes you think about life very, very clearly. And I hope there can be some really positive solution about it, where there's kindness being shown between each other on this. But in the media, you know what it's like at that station in management. They may not necessarily show that level of kindness.
No, that's what's interesting about this. I think weirdly they will try, because your point is completely right. He will have been frustrated because in the past, if you're a presenter, you just sneak off set, you rush to the loo in the ad break, and you come back on set by the time it starts. And he would have been so gutted that he wants to be in there on camera, and this woman's telling him not to. But unfortunately, as soon as it gets physical, things get escalated. But as I say, I've got to stress, there is this other side of the argument, which is that the CCTV footage was inconclusive, and as a result, I'm sure Eamonn will be fine. But it is interesting that you talk about James Whale, because I mean, I'm very close friends with James and have been very touched by what's been going on with him over the past couple of weeks. He was actually meant to be here on Outspoken last week, and unfortunately just as it wasn't well enough. So absolutely we think about that. And then just today, news from he's a former ITV news presenter, former BBC presenter, former Sky News presenter, Dermot Murnaghan, out of nowhere. Some personal news. I've been diagnosed with stage 4 advanced prostate cancer. I'm fortunate to have a simply outstanding medical team looking after me, who I can't thank enough. They are administering the best possible care with expertise, compassion, and sensitivity. I'm responding positively to their excellent treatment and feeling well. I'm blessed to be fortified by the monumental love and support of my wife, family, and close friends. Needless to say, my message to all men over 50 in high-risk groups or displaying symptoms is get yourself tested and campaign for routine prostate screening by the NHS. Early detection is crucial, and be aware this disease can sometimes progress rapidly without obvious symptoms. So I don't know if you knew Dermot Murnahan,
Yeah,
Stephen.
Absolutely. And please, if you see James again, I've sent messages myself. James again was one of the kindest men when I was first coming on to media. Gave me some guidance, gave me some criticism as well, which was in his only way that he could do, which was brilliant. And was exactly the same. These are really decent journalists who I think are really respected in their trade for doing what they do, which is actually think about the issues and not draw their own conclusions automatically. Yes, they have the issues of corporate responsibility and having to take the sides of the corporation they're employed by, but decent men, and I respect all of them. I wish he gets well very, very soon.
Yeah, it is incredibly sad news that today. Meanwhile, another major broadcasting scandal at the British Bashing Corporation, this we covered initially last week, involving its star presenter Naga Munchetty, who has now been accused of bullying on the show. And there's been new reporting from the Daily Mail over the weekend. I just want to take you through this and then I'll get your reaction, Will Coleshill. So the Mail reports BBC Breakfast star Naga Munchetty has been holding discussions with Sky News and radio station LBC in an apparent bid to leave the corporation, industry sources have revealed. In a surprise move, the presenter held talks with both broadcasters in what appears to be an attempt to escape the toxic atmosphere on the programme. She co-hosts 3 days a week with Charlie State. However, sources say the talks broke down recently, with some bosses at the networks unsure about 50-year-old Ms. Munchetty's tough ways and deciding against continuing negotiations. One said there were quite a few discussions with both Sky and LBC, but then it was decided by both that they wouldn't go any further. She is quite sharp and it is perhaps not what they were looking for, so it all kind of fell apart. Rightly or wrongly, Naga has a reputation for being tough and difficult at times. They didn't like that. When asked yesterday if she wished to comment on moves to leave the BBC, Ms. Munchetty's agent did not respond. And this story made the front page of the Mail on Sunday and also made the front page of The Sun last week. Now, Will Coleshill, what is interesting, I think, about this story is that the allegations are that she bullied a young junior staff member, but also that she made an off-air sex jibe. Now, I'm the opposite of PC, right? And I would usually say, toughen up, these staff have to deal with this. You know, can we not make a joke anymore? But what's so interesting when it comes to Naga Munchetty, right, is that it feels like she's almost receiving special treatment because she's a woman. You know, like if this was a man, like literally Wyn Evans from Strictly Come Dancing, he was a BBC Wales presenter. He made one moderately rude joke involving a spit roast, a joke about a spit roast, and he was booted. He lost everything. He said he nearly considered taking his own life. Yet when it's a woman, it feels like all is okay with it at the BBC. So you can understand why there's a lot of consternation around this story.
Well, there is a lot of female privilege in our society. And I know a lot of people sort of lived more in the past where they think about women being discriminated against in different workplaces. But I'm 30 and my experience throughout my life is women generally do get an easier time. And I think that society, in order to try and compensate for what's happened in the past, is overcompensating. And a lot of men are being pushed down. There's a lot of suicide and men are being sidelined at jobs. And that you do see this double standard throughout everything. But I think it can point to a bit more of a greater toxic culture within the BBC. The BBC, well, why isn't Naga going and doing something independent like you? Why doesn't she just, you know, step out and create something of her own? Why is she searching around other mainstream places? I don't think she has the talent that you have. I don't think she has the talent of other people in the independent media. I think she should go and build something for herself and see if people genuinely like her, and genuinely want what the BBC's offering.
Come on, Naga. Get outspoken, I'll take you on. By the way, there was just a sweet little celebrity video I watched over the weekend, and I thought, I liked this. I like this because, you know, London's, like, we all know it's just a shithole now and it's so dangerous. But Simon Cowell is out on the street on his bike to avoid the traffic jams. Watch this.
Yes, Simon. Yes, Simon. Yes, Simon.
I can't believe it. Why are you like this? What? On the bike, isn't it? Are you not scared?
I got lost, but it is quicker.
Please just go with God, okay?
I will, I promise.
Thank you. We love you, Simon.
Oh, cheers.
Take care.
Take care,
man.
take
Take
care.
care. Bye-bye. All right, bye, darling.
Stephen Woolfe. you've got to admit, I mean, London's a terrible place these days, but pretty cool that you can wind your window down and there's Simon Cowell on the bike.
No, I do find that funny. After what we've been talking about, it's nice to have a little bit of humour when we're coming through it. I do love the fact that she said, go with God. I think generally if they tried to do that on the BBC and ITV, they'd have cut that last word out, no doubt. Probably anything else.
Yes. Yes, they would indeed. Well, look, absolutely great to have you both. Stars of the independent media, true stars of the independent media. Of course, Stephen Woolfe is also the director of the Centre for Migration and Prosperity, but you will see him on Lotus Eaters. And Will Coleshill, absolutely love what you're doing with Resistance GB, truly independent media. And I guess your message is what for people to subscribe for you? Where do you want people to subscribe to you most?
At GB Resistance on X, I'm at Will Coleshill. We've got a YouTube channel. We put out our coverage of anyone fighting for freedom. That's what we do.
Love it. Absolutely great stuff. Well, brilliant to have you both here, and I hope that you will be back soon. But now it's time to reveal today's greatest Britain and Union jackass. First, though, to your comments. Thank you to Abata for the super chat, who write, Nigel Farage is making a huge mistake. The more he slanders Tommy, the more votes he loses. UKIP are looking like the better choice over Conform. Get behind Nick Tanconi. Time to take out the trash. Programming note, Nick Tanconi will be here later in the week. Annie Chilton wrote, just pointing out that it's not just the working class who support Tommy. People from all backgrounds support him. I think that is such a good point, and I actually believe that's really changed over the past few months, and I think it will continue to change. Simon Brandy writes, if Robert Jenrick becomes Conservative leader, they become the least worst option. If they poach Rupert Lowe, I'd be more encouraged. And on the MSM, Kat Harvey writes, yep, I stopped watching all MSM months ago as I will not be lectured and lied to. The soaps too, they just spout lefty rubbish instead of actual storylines. Coronation Street was the worst for that. I mean, what a crime. What a crime that woke ITV has even destroyed Coronation Street. It's like nothing is sacred, nothing is safe from the woke mind virus. Okay, time to reveal your Union jackass now, but first a reminder of the nominees. India Willoughby, nominated by Darren Donaldson for her completely bonkers posts, saying that there are better trans rights in Iran than in the UK. Or the US. Okay, then. Stephen Fry, nominated by Claire Wellen for his attacks on J.K. Rowling. And Narinder Kaur, nominated by Big Mama Booth for her two bonkers tweets. But my favourite was this one. Day 7 in Sicily, I've eaten 19 types of pasta, the same pizza over and over, and would now kill for a samosa or curry. Why is international cuisine so scarce? Yeah, and she was quite rightly roasted for that. In third place, India Willoughby with 23% of your vote. This has been a very close one all day, though. The runner-up, Narinder Kaur. But today's Union jackass with 40% of your vote, Stephen Fry. Great choice. Well done, all of you. And now, today's greatest Britain. This was a very popular nominee today, but we'll go with X-Ray Gal 245, who said BBC newsreader Martine Croxall, who corrected the autocue to women. Very rare. In fact, I think it may be the first time we've ever had someone from the BBC winning Greatest Britain, but it does just show you we're completely unbiased when it comes to this thing. If they do the right thing, we will support them. Now, coming up in the Uncancelled After Show on Substack, Meghan Markle and Prince Harry on the brink over a series of crises. I'm going to outline all of these claims by teaming up with the Royal News Network. So at this stage, we move off YouTube and Rumble and continue the conversation at Substack, www.outspoken.live. But we are back live with you tomorrow, 5 p.m. UK time, midday Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Hit subscribe right now. Join our thriving community on YouTube. 400,000 of you have already done so, and I am so grateful. Most importantly, I promise to keep fighting for you.